Hey everyone, it's Leah. Thank you for being here. Where we left off, I was in the hospital. I had been diagnosed with this condition. The treatment for the condition was to have you off of foods, like nothing by mouth, so no food, no water, no nothing. The doctor had just sort of taken me aside and been like, if this gets real bad, normally we would have to operate, but we can't because you're too fat. Have you considered bariatric surgery? I know they don't do like philosophy classes in med school, but you would think like a minimum of critical thinking would be possible. Like that didn't flag in her brain as a really bizarre thing to say. Like that it just doesn't match up. Like, am I too fat to have a surgery or not? I feel like she just kind of like hoped that I was as unintelligent as I think she assumed I was. Because here's the thing. People who have fat bias, and this is very true of doctors often, they really act as though, one, we can't be trusted. And that's something that we found out in my very first video that I posted, where basically I went for over a year with symptoms that got so bad I was having seizures and stuff. Eventually my doctor was like, nothing's wrong. So like they don't trust us. But also like when you believe that all you have to do to get thin is like eat well and exercise, you kind of have to believe that in order for someone to be my size, I must just be really stupid. Because it's really easy, right? All I have to do is eat well and exercise. So if I'm not doing that, like being fat is hard. And if I'm not doing that, man, I must be really stupid that I can't figure that out, like, and that's the thing, is that it's just so simplistic, and that's not how things are. But I kind of get if that's your belief, if you really think it's that simple, then yeah, it makes sense that you think I'm not very smart if I haven't been able to get thin, right? And so I kind of think that despite her like really bananas logic, that she kind of thought, you know what? I think she might not be smart enough to catch on to how inconsistent this argument is. Like I really think she thought, I think I can get this one past her. I know how to think critically. I am a smart person. She said this to me, and I kind of looked at her and I said to myself, is this what this has all been for? Like this whole conversation where she takes me through like my symptoms, and then she takes me through like why I'm using my walker, and she takes me through like, what have you done to try to lose weight, and like all of this stuff. Was this all an attempt to kind of like intellectually corner me so she could then say, let's cut you open. Let's take a piece of your stomach out. You no longer have a stomach like the average person who has space in it to eat a meal's worth of food. And in that meal, you would have, the proteins, the vitamins and minerals, the carbohydrates, the fats, the whatever you need to power your body and to have, the different minerals and vitamins and things that your body needs to absorb to make different proteins and different, fluids and stuff in your body. All of that stuff we normally get from our food. Because that is no longer possible for somebody who has had the procedure, there can be real problems if you try to behave as you did before you had the procedure. So let's say you've had bariatric surgery. You say, you know what? I'm going to treat myself. I'm going to go out for a seafood dinner or something. And you eat a whole meal, like what an average person would eat, you can get really, really severe complications. There's something called dumping syndrome, which is extremely painful. There are bad complications that happen when you try to behave like somebody who has not had this procedure done in terms of the food you consume. And I'm going to share this completely anonymously. I don't want to give any details because I think it's not my story, but I think there is something to be learned from it. And so I'm going to share it as anonymously as possible. I'm not going to give any identifying details, but I'm going to talk about somebody I know who had the procedure who had massive complications. So I know somebody who without giving too much detail, has an autoimmune condition that makes them not a good candidate for bariatric surgery. However, their doctor proceeded to not only allow, but encourage this patient to pursue bariatric surgery. This patient went through the steps leading up to the surgery, which some of them are sort of to make sure you can actually live within the constraints that you'll have to eventually. So like, can you manage your life with the restriction required for the small amount of food you'll have to eat? So you'll have to prove to them like, yes, over the past X amount of time, I've been able to have like one morsel every 15 years, whatever. It's like a tiny amount of food. You have to show them you can do it prior to getting the operation. And then they let you get the operation and presumably you're supposed to live like that for the rest of your life and pop a bunch of vitamins and you're good. So this person had gone through that phase of saying, yeah, sure, I can do that. The doctor approved it. This person had gotten the procedure. Now, keep in mind, this person had an autoimmune disorder. Basically, after they got the procedure, they started having massive complications. The autoimmune disorder was causing problems. The new size of their digestive tract was causing problems, not least of which because this person does not, and I don't blame them, does not have the ability to restrict that much for the rest of their life. We ended up in a place where this person who, I cared so much for and I was really concerned for was in a position where they were pretty much like on death's door. And it was really hard for us to, like, me and my partner kind of talked about it a little bit, and it was really hard for us to wrap our head around, like, why would their doctor, who knew they had this really serious autoimmune condition, allow them to go through this procedure knowing that it was very likely that there would be complications due to that pre-existing condition. And it all, like, the only thing we could think of is that it came down to this attitude that I've seen over and over again in the medical profession of, well, they would rather us be dead than fat. Being fat is like the worst thing, When I was in the hospital and the surgeon brought up bariatric surgery, I just started shaking my head to myself and I said, you know what? Here we are. Here it is again. She would rather I be dead than fat. She just told me surgery was dangerous for me. It was life-threatening. And then she said, would you like this surgery to be less fat? It doesn't matter to her if I might die because the fatness is so bad in her mind that it's worth the risk. It's worth the risk. The very high risk based on how she presented it. It's worth the risk. So she asked me if I wanted to have the procedure. Did you want to go for bariatric surgery? And this is fully bananas because, as I've already mentioned, when you're going to have this type of procedure, there's a period where you have to demonstrate that you're able to live a lifestyle where it's not going to interfere with the really restrictive limitations that you're going to have once you've had the procedure done. And so that's normally like a 6-month process or something where you just basically have to show, I can eat one grape at a time or whatever. But she was so very concerned about my well-being. Not my diverticulitis, not that part. She was so concerned about me being fat that she was suggesting bariatric surgery as though that was something I could just pop into tomorrow and have done. And that is not realistic. When she asked me, did you want to have this procedure? I was like, no, I don't. And she was kind of taken aback. And she said, well, you don't have to give an answer right now. And I said, I don't want it. And she said, okay, well, why don't I come back tomorrow once you've thought about it a bit? Maybe like talk with your partner, And I said, listen, you can come back tomorrow. You can come back the day after. You can come back every day for the rest of my life. And the answer's still going to be no. Okay, well, just think on it. Just think on it. That's how it went. And the next day, this would be day 3, I'm in the hospital. I had another conversation with her. And of course, they always come by at like 6 a.m. And I got to tell you, my partner, not a morning person. He loves, being in the doctor's office with me and stuff. He always comes, he helps advocate for me. But to expect him to drive halfway across town to the hospital to be there by 6 a.m., forget it. Forget it. Almost never was he there when they would do their rounds in the morning. And because of that, most of the time when they accosted me about this, he was not there. I think every time, actually. And so when he did come in to visit on, day 2, I told him what had happened. He was livid. He was absolutely livid. He, like me, was confused about why she thought it was such a valid suggestion that I could get bariatric surgery when she had just told me I couldn't get a life-saving surgery on another part of my digestive tract if the diverticulitis became too dangerous. He was like a child can logic better than that. Like what? Like, what is happening? He was just really confused, and I don't blame him. It is very confusing. She came back on day 3. Again, it was early in the morning. She asked me again, and I told her no again. And at that point, she had started, the main surgeon lady had started sending the resident, and the resident was a lot less, she had like better bedside manner. Like she would come in, and she would like have like a gentle voice, and before she left, she would like give my hand a little squeeze or something, or put her hand on my shoulder, you know. And so the third day she sent her, and then she asked me if I wanted to have the procedure done. And I was like, no. And it just kind of continued like that for days. So finally, I was in the hospital for a total of 6 days. And one of those days was mostly an emergency. So it was kind of like being there 5 days. And so on day 3, I said no again. And this was to the resident. She was like the nice one or whatever. As I say, I don't like policing women's demeanor, but she felt warmer. The 4th day, they came in together. And it was actually not first thing in the morning. It was actually in the afternoon. Nobody was there, so I didn't have like a visitor or anything. My partner was like, it was not the time of day that he came to visit. He always came to visit during the day, but it wasn't like right then. They came and they were like, wouldn't you like to have bariatric surgery? And I was like, no, I would not like to have bariatric surgery. And they're like, are you sure? I was like, yeah, I'm still sure. I would not like to have bariatric surgery. And I'll never forget this. The surgeon says, okay, but like, have you thought though about like the difference it would make in your quality of life? And I was like, I have, and it seems like it would give me a negative quality of life. Like, I think my quality of life would be worse than it is now because I haven't really seen any evidence that the major health issue that I have right now is caused by the size of my body, for starters. And 2, I've seen lots of research around bariatric surgery and lots of experiences people have had. And the quality of life is not stellar afterwards for most people, you know? And so I was like, I just don't think we agree on this, and it's fine. We can agree to disagree. And she says, yes, but like your ankle, for example. And I was like, my ankle? What do you mean my ankle? And I kind of looked at my foot and I thought to myself, like, is there something like wildly wrong with my ankle that I haven't noticed? And I look at my foot looks fine. And I was like, what do you mean? She's like, well, when you broke your ankle. And I was like, yeah, what about it? And she's like, that stuff will keep happening. And my brain was just like, I felt like my brain was scrambled egg. I was just like, what is happening right now? Like, I thought for a minute and I said, hang on, how do you think I broke my ankle? And she said, well, you fell down and it broke. And I said, yeah, but what caused me to fall down? And she's like, I imagine you were walking about or something. And I said, I broke my ankle because I had a seizure and I fell and my leg was underneath me in a weird angle and I landed right on my ankle and it broke. That's why I broke my ankle. And the look on her face, like the look on her face, I have to say, that was the highlight of my hospital stay. Because like, she didn't seem like a woman that was prone to embarrassment, but it was so clear that she had made such an egregious assumption, i.e. that I'm so fat that just walking down the street, my ankle's gonna go out from under me and break because I'm that fucking fat. And I'm just like watching her, like the blood leave her face, and I'm just like, oh my God, this is not happening right now. So this is the kind of thing I have to laugh at it, right? Because if you're not laughing, you're crying is sort of my life philosophy. And like, it's just so absurd. I think people just have this like so many misconceptions about fatness. Like they really don't understand it at all. And so when I hear this stuff, I'm like, it's kind of funny. It's so silly that it's kind of funny. She really doesn't seem to clock that, like, if you've been fat your whole life, you grow in your fat body. It like sustains itself, you know? maybe I have like the same strength of bones as like my thin partner, for example. But like, because I've always been in this body, the musculature in my legs, for example, has like grown stronger to be able to sustain my weight, right? Like it's supporting my legs so that I can function. And like, like they don't seem to realize like how physics work. Like if I was so fat that my legs are just gonna snap under me like twigs, like how did I get to 40 and never have any broken bones? Like, I just don't understand how she thinks physics work with a fat body. Like, it's really bizarre to me. That was absolutely the highlight of my stay, was being able to just look at her with a cocked eyebrow and be like, I have a seizure. What you're describing doesn't happen. Like, that's not a normal way to break an ankle. Like, I'm sorry, but like, that is not, like, without warning, just like bam, it like goes out from under me and cracks like a stick. I'm just like, what? Like, what a bizarre thing to think. Oh, I could not wait to tell my partner that when he came to visit. So I'll stop roasting her, but it just tickled me pink. After that, I think they just sort of, we don't actually have any good arguments left. We're just going to ask her. We're just going to ask her until we wear her down. And so we're already at day 4. Day 5, just the resident comes in. She says, hey, and she's all like pleasant and everything. And then she's like, how about now? Now? How about now? Now? At this point, they have asked me like 5 times, would you like to cut yourself open? Which like is never an option that I would elect to do unless it's like a life-saving surgery. Just my opinion. I know people get cosmetic surgery and stuff, not judging them, but it's just not a choice I would make. I've never even dyed my hair. I'm just like not a body mod kind of gal. I thought I was very rebellious getting my cartilage pierced when I was like 19. So I guess just they had asked me so many times, and I was thinking about my friend who had had bariatric surgery and who had the complications due to the existing condition. I just started crying. I said, no, I said, I can't have this procedure. I said, I know somebody who is basically dying right now because they had this procedure. I can't do it. I'm not doing it. I said, this person, and like, again, no identifying details, but like, this person has lived. They have lived through some shit. And I don't mean like through medical stuff. I mean through life stuff. And I said to them, the medical resident, I was like, they lived through this, and 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 they came out the other side. And then what's going to take them out? Wanting to get thin, That's what's going to take out this badass motherfucker. Pardon my language. And this is how they're going to go out? Like, it breaks my heart. And I'm sitting here crying and saying, I'm so scared that they're going to die on me. And like, they're such a badass. And like, this is what gets them. Like, it just seems so unfair. And I'm like, I'm bawling my eyes out. And she is so uncomfortable. Kleenex. And she goes and she's trying to find a box of Kleenex to give the sobbing girl in the hospital bed. She finds Kleenex and she gives it to me. Well, I dried up my face and she said, okay, so, and she checked in with me about like other stuff, like how's your pain, all this. And then she left. At this point, it's, I believe, Friday. And I believe I was discharged on Saturday morning. I was checking my white blood cell count every day because we have a great service where when you're in the hospital in Ontario, at least where I am, they have this service where when they run tests, they upload it to your file, and there's like a website where you can go and like log in and see all the like results of your test. It's excellent. It's great. So I had been tracking my white blood cells, and they'd kind of been like way up high, and then they'd kind of been like, and I'd had like a really stressful roommate. So like when I moved me to a different room, it was kind of like, like if like this was the baseline of like, where is healthy white blood cells? I was like right here on the Friday. On the Saturday morning, they came and they did my blood. They saw that my blood was, I think the like threshold is like 10, like you shouldn't have over 10, whatever the units are. And I was at like 9.9 and they discharged me. No CT scan, no making sure my white blood cells are well in the accepted range. No. I was below 10. They discharged me. My feeling is that they did that with a kind of attitude of like, we're never going to convince her, let's just cut her loose. That was how it felt. When I told my partner that they did no follow-up scan before they discharged me to see what was happening in my guts. He was like, come again? How do they know that it's not still there? Like, how do they know? You're still in pain and your white blood cells are like not 10, but they're like 9.9. Like, how do they know it's resolved? How do they know that an oral antibiotic, which is much less strong, is going to get you over the finish line with this thing? Like, how do they know that if they can't see what's happening? I said, I know. But that's what they did. So come pick me up, please. He came and he got me and he brought me home. We went to the pharmacy, got the oral antibiotics I was supposed to continue taking, etc. When I got home, I had to keep on what they called a low residue diet. Basically, it's designed to put as little as possible through your digestive system. So like it lands in your stomach no matter what you eat, right? But some stuff like clear fluids basically go into your stomach and they're like, oh, there's no solids here. This goes right to your like bladder as long as we've absorbed all the nutrients and stuff. You just pee it out, you know, it's all liquid. Low residue food is basically stuff that they've figured out that in the like day or two that it takes for the food to kind of go through your intestines that are just like a maze, right? And it takes forever for stuff to go through. It takes like a day or two for things to go through. By the time it gets to the point where it would be waste, there's nothing really left. So it's things like really simple carbohydrates. So like white bread is a good example because there's no fiber in it. There's not really anything except like simple carbohydrates, and your body absorbs that through your small intestine as it's going through your system. So basically you end up with nothing in terms of waste. Like there's just no waste left over by the time you're done digesting it. On the other hand, things that do create waste are things like fiber. Fiber is like famously we can't digest it. That's why it actually makes you have regular poops, because it kind of softens your stool or whatever. But that will go through you. And so it will create like residue. And there's other stuff that we can't digest. Like for example, some hydrogenated oils. Our body kind of thinks it's plastic basically. So it's like, what is this? I don't know what this is. And so it just kind of considers it waste. That's like the two examples I can think of. There might be more stuff, but like that's the two that are like the most like commonly talked about, and that like you do actually come across fairly often in life. Like if you're eating a pastry or something, it probably has hydrogenated oil in it. And there's pastries all over the place, right? So like you would come across that fairly often. And of course, fiber is in so many things. I remember having a conversation. We were at work and one of my wonderful colleagues likes to bake for us. And she brought in like an assortment of cookies. She didn't bring in like one kind of cookie. She brought in like an assortment of cookies that she had baked. And there was like, you know, ginger ones and oatmeal ones. And I was like, I have to have the ginger one. The oatmeal one's not good for me right now. And it's just like so counterintuitive because everyone's always like fiber, 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 more fiber. It's good for gut health and like good for your intestinal health and all that stuff. And like, it was the exact opposite for me. Like I had to think about like, okay, I can't have anything with oats in it. I can't have anything with whole grains in it. Can't have most vegetables. Raw vegetables were just out. I could not have like a salad or anything. Forget it. I could have like vegetables that were like cooked to within an inch of their life, like canned carrots, things like that. It was just like, it was bananas. So, which is another thing I could actually eat. I could eat ripe bananas as well. Anyway, so I ate that for a few weeks. I was supposed to continue the low residue diet for 4 to 6 weeks. And I had oral antibiotics for, I think it was about 2 weeks after I left the hospital. I got about 3 weeks out, the pain came back. And then one day my partner gets a call at work from me. I'm sobbing. I don't cry from pain. Everyone probably thinks this, but I do actually have a wild pain tolerance. Like I don't cry from pain ever. And I have chronic pain. So I know pain for sure. I'm crying and I say to him, I need to go back to the hospital. It hurts so bad. I think something's really, really wrong. So we came home from work and we went back to the hospital 3 weeks after I was discharged. And that's where I'm going to end it today. In my next part, I'll talk about how the second hospital stay went. That's all for today. Thank you so much for joining me, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye for now.